welcome back to another episode of Comic Penciling. It's episode 15, and I decided that we should add another element, specifically vehicles, to our comic skill set. So to make worlds believable, you need to draw things convincingly, and one of those things that we need to draw convincingly is vehicles like motorcycles and cars. So I'm going to draw a motorcycle here. It's pretty simple to start. We're using Scott Robertson's method of pretty much measuring and using side and top planes to kind of model your way into drawing a 3D vehicle. So what you need is a side view already drawn or images from online. So that's how you would start. Get a side view and a top view of a motorcycle, and you're just going to find these points in space in your on your piece. In my piece, it's a 2-point perspective, so I set up my. You can see I've already set up my side plane, and I'm doing a whole lot of measuring here in Clip Studio, which actually I have a bunch of perspective rulers already set up, and that was really helping the flow here. First time really using Clip Studio here, and it really helps to have these rulers on. So with this side view, you need to measure out how far away the two different wheels are. For a motorcycle, it's very important. Cars, it's pretty important as well, but there's so many variations, and these motorcycles are pretty standard, where there's about a wheel and a half in between the front and back wheels. So like you need to measure out with techniques from Scott Robertson's book for measuring. Well, it's every artist's tool to figure out how to replicate exact or squares and rectangles into space. So if you know how to do that to figure out how far apart the wheels are. And then you're gonna add, you can see I've already added the bottom plane to try to figure out the thickness of the bike, just to give you a good sense of things. And in the beginning you might have saw me use a photo of a motorcycle, and that's a good way to do it if you're working digitally, to overlay and see if you're about right for scale. It's a good way to start learning. I recommend it if you're digitally working that way. So here I'm putting in pretty much the middle, the center of the. So I'm working on the side plane, and it's at the exact center of the motorcycle. This is exactly the middle of everything. So the middle point, that cross section on the front wheel, that's the most middle point of the circle that becomes the wheel. I can explain how to draw ellipses, but that's essentially what we're doing here. We're finding all the points you need to draw a correct ellipse in space. So I find the middle section by doing diagonals from all 4 points, and then using that middle point to use that middle point along with your perspective lines to find the cross sections. So that would be the top, bottom, left, and right side middle points. And ellipses, you need to hit all 4 of those points and have it fold over on itself on both axes, but mainly the minor axis. And the minor axis is the axis that is pretty much the axle for a tire. So that line that goes perpendicular to the tire, that's your minor axis. So that's where you need to make sure, if you draw a line through there as the minor axis, it needs to be able to have the same amount of visually the same amount of space on both sides of that line. And my front tire here, I didn't realize right away I needed to have this front tire be tilted a little bit. So I'll eventually have to go back in and turn it. But here I set it up with the side view I've already designed for this sci-fi bike I'm working on. It's from my I've been working on it for a long time. So if you know Comic Penciling, I've been doing Star Circuit for a long time, and I'm finally moving forward with the full thing. You might have known I've done test pages before, but I'm moving on with the whole shebang-a-bang, with the whole thing. And this is the bike I designed, did a side view of it, and now for this banner, I recorded all this video to show how I do the bike in 3D. And so once you have the wheels kind of plotted in, And all you are doing right here is working on the center line. You're not trying to draw in 3D. This is just a center, pretty much the side view just in perspective. You're plotting these points. So the way it works is, say in your side view, like say a quarter or maybe a half of a wheel, you need to use the wheels as standards. Pretty much everything's compared back to the wheel. So maybe say the quarter of a length of a wheel, that's how high above the wheel to the next piece of metal. You use that as a measurement and then try to find it in space on your side plane. So here, that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to realize, well, at first I think I have the right scale, but I realize that I'm way too small. And I will scale it up eventually. I don't remember when, but I'm trying to work with the sketch that I have behind and try to figure out exactly if this is going to work. Now, generally, bikes are really standard, but this is a sci-fi bike, so I have a little leeway there. So it is kind of helpful in some ways to have, a creative type of bike. You're not restricted as much. But I do have, because I'm moving on here to the more final lines, not final lines, but the final lines for the side plane, and you'll see how much more detailed it gets, and I'm able to get that. I'm able to be that free with the design because it's a sci-fi bike. So yeah, there I checked with the photo how big it should be, and I scaled it up here. So the difference is here, I need the bike to be a certain height, and it just wasn't reaching that scale. So here I'm just trying to find a good point of reference is dividing the bike in half and finding where things are in your side view. So the gas tank hump is a little bit past halfway, but that's what I'm going off. I'm looking halfway between everything and seeing what lines up with what. How far back is, and since you're working with just one plane, you don't have to worry about depth at all. So it's kind of easy. You're just drawing a side plane, the side view in perspective. Just everything that recedes into space, you just have to draw with that perspective line. And if you have a ruler, it's going to make it that much easier, especially if you're online or on a computer, So everything you start with, these beginning lines that you're putting in, are incredibly valuable. But if you mess them up, if you don't take your time, it's going to really kind of be a landslide of errors that kind of multiply on themselves. So the more you get this right and take your time, the better. And you can see I put in that center point that I talked about, and I'm comparing all these proportions, and it takes a long time to get your bike to look right in perspective. And this is just the center line. This is really the meat and potatoes of it, because you making it look 3D is, it's useful. It's kind of like a comic penciler compared to like an inker. This center line is like the comic penciler. It's the foundation of your whole comic. So the center plane is like really the foundation of the whole bike when it becomes 3D. Everything's based upon these measurements. So if you mess up, you mess up. Now, this video is probably about a half an hour, so we have plenty of time to talk about what I'm doing. I want to break down some of the things I'm getting into here. And if you're ever really, really confused with the more fundamental things, which a lot of people may, this is more of an advanced, I would say this is an advanced kind of video. You need to know fundamentals to get through this. And the fundamentals you need to know are pretty much described in many books, but stuff like this, I think Scott Robertson's book, How to Draw, is one of the best. And you can find that anywhere. It's an amazing book to practice and figure things out. But there's a lot of things to understand about form and perspective and generally just proportion and everything. So this may be too advanced for you, but if it's not, if it's close and you're not too frustrated with it, go find a nice side view and try to build this side plane. So this whole video right now, this is part one. I couldn't even get the whole thing in one video. but this whole half an hour, this part 1, is just getting the side plane in. So I don't want to like disappoint you, but you're not going to see the 3D render of the bike come to life in this video that'll be coming shortly. Here it's all about manipulating objects in space, but only on one axis. And you'll see me get into some of the wheels and stuff too, because the wheels, I think even Scott Robertson says it in some of his videos, but the wheels really are, it's like a huge percentage of how someone perceives the believability of the vehicle. Like if the wheels look wonky, or if they don't look the right proportion, everything else, or just drawn poorly, it's just not going to be believable. But to the contrary, if you do nail the wheels and maybe some other things about the bike are not great, it'll be really believable. It'll look like maybe just like a more beat up type of car or vehicle, but at least it'll be believable. So here on this bike, the windshield is actually a force field and it's invisible. So I measured it in there. You can see me measuring it in there, but it's not going to be there. So the front of the bike is actually the console area is very small, and there's really not enough space for you to fit your head behind until you realize the force field is just invisible, and the windshield will be there. So here, my bike, this front end of a bike is, from the side view, it's flat, but really it's kind of curved a little bit, and I'm using a lot of straight. A lot of the stuff in sci-fi is really hard edged, but around the corners they're slightly beveled. That's how most of sci-fi stuff is, at least in our culture, in our generation. It's been like that, because if you go far back, you go to like Sid Mead and a lot of his drawings, the sci-fi stuff he was using is like this retro sci-fi, which is still using these hard edge switches, big. It's almost like this mechanical kind of future. It's like almost a different future, but the future we see, and at least the products that we start seeing coming out in our generation, they'll look like very hard edged but slightly curved around big side planes, and when they churn, different volumes will have different kind of degrees of curvature, but as long as you know there's a little bit of curve on everything, that's all you need to know. So, and with this bike, I try to mix a little bit of both. I like to mix how to, the curvature, and also how it blends into the hard edged, like the front end versus, say, the gas tank. So, really, this beginning part, I want to tell you step by step how to do everything. But really, this beginning part is just like a giant process of finding a point on your side view and then finding it in space. So let's just say something is just as high as your front wheel and hitting the middle point, kind of in the middle of my gas tank. You need to find exactly where that point is and find the right curvature. And to do that, it's a lot. You can look at my head flicking back and forth in the video. It's sped up, but I look like I have like some sort of tick, but I flick back and forth because I'm constantly looking at the side view and trying to figure out if I have it in space correctly. And you'll notice when you get it right, because it's just a side plane. You don't have to visualize anything in 3D. You're not visualizing it as a volume. You're just visualizing it as, like, pretend this is a TV screen, a flat version of something, or maybe Paper Mario if you're a fan of that franchise. But yeah, pretend it's a 2D thing in a 3D space, like a cardboard cutout. That's what you're drawing. That's a way better way to explain it. This is a cardboard cutout of your motorcycle. You're just putting it in space. And it's going to take a while to get all the proportions right. While I'm working on this part here, I kind of want to talk about a couple other things. The design part of it's another thing. You have to kind of study a little bit to figure out how to draw a motorcycle. You kind of need to draw realistic ones. a little bit, or hear somebody talk about it, or do some sketches. So before I did this render, I drew, I don't know, 10 or so drawings of the same bike in different angles, trying to figure out what parts work, and I made minor changes between each one. Like this little engine in between, it's not a typical engine, it's a sci-fi looking tube, almost like Secret of the Ooze style Ninja Turtles. And it's like this little tube that I put in the middle of the bike instead of an engine, and that's just design of the bike, you know. And you'll see later on in this video how much I pull back and change from what I have here. But this is really just part one. The next part is taking this cardboard cutout and finding the width of everything. It's all about finding how wide is this point, how wide is this point, and to do that you need to make sections. And it's a term that I don't know if Scott Robertson coined, but it's you're trying to find the wireframe sectional of a certain axis. So that vanishing point, the perspective lines that are coming directly toward us, out from the background we can see, those lines coming toward us, that's the width perspective line that we're looking at. We need to find out how far left and right of that center line do things widen out to be. How far, and you kind of need to be a little bit aware of, you know, because some things look a little wonky, so you need to have a little bit of like a give and take with it. But because you could see me going back and forth between erasing, pulling some of this back, because it's not a real bike. I'm trying to figure out, does it look like it's rideable? Does it look cool? Does it, all these little things, and trying to, on the fly, figure out if this is going to work in 3D space, because I have a sketch behind that I'm trying to mix. I know if you're just drawing a motorcycle, it doesn't matter. You have I would suggest you just use a 1-point perspective and you know, go a little bit above the horizon line, a little below, and practice drawing motorcycles or cars that way. Cars are a little different because your center line is, everything's just a little bit different. There's, I'd say in some ways it's easier personally, but here I'm talking about how you widen things out. You see that little center line there? And I'm explaining what I'm about to do. I'm trying to find a section to start widening out the wheel, and this is when I realized I need to turn the wheel. The wheel is facing the same direction as the bike, but really bikes will have a little bit of turn to them. And I'm even picking up my toy, my little model, to see how much it would turn. And even this bike in this image looks like it's turned a little bit too. So here's where I'm grabbing another vanishing point on our horizon line and pulling out a new set of pretty much rulers. So here I'm trying to figure out the width. This is what we call the section. So this is like the tube of the tire, say, and that tube needs to go all the way around the tire to make it look obviously realistic, and also you know, have weight and feel like it's a physical object in the world. So finding that wheel width is, you're just gonna have to look at reference and see how thick wheels are. And motorcycle wheels are very round. They're not like car tires. Like a normal car tire's got like a very flat kind of set, a side. You know what I mean? Not a side, but the front, I'd say. So the part that goes around is very flat. The part with the tread on a car, on a motorcycle, is very round, so they can lean. There's no, like, obviously to drive a motorcycle you need to be able to lean, you know, 45 degrees or whatever, depending on how fast you're going, if you're driving that fast anyway. But still, there's something that you need to figure out for almost everything. It's just that for the wheels, since it's the most convincing part of this process, you need to like kind of play with it a little bit. So you can see the section at the bottom of the wheel I mirrored to the top. That way I could find the exact width, go with the sketch, and I'm using an ellipse tool right now to find how high and wide and if I'm hitting the right axis. And this is even before I angle it. I realized at some point that I need to angle it, like I've been saying, and then I have to redraw pretty much everything. You'll see me do it. Anyway, those ellipse guides are pretty much it's the same thing as using an ellipse guide for real, except it's just a ruler in this program. Now you could freehand this if you know how to use the minor axis, and you know how to draw ellipses, but using these guys really help. So like I said, this is a more advanced video, so everything is predicated on everything coming before this in the fundamental point of view. You know, you need to know everything to get to this point. So and like I said, the shout out to Scott Robertson's kind of videos and his books are kind of like your stepping stones to getting to this point. But I wanted to do something like this because it's very, very appealing to anyone, really. I mean, there's a reason why I did it myself, is because I need to have these bikes be super convincing, especially for this comic book that I'm doing. For Star Circuit, everything's revolving around these motorcycles. So the whole comic is based upon not exactly all racing, but a lot of racing in this comic book. So I got to be able to move it in space, and really Scott Robertson's instructions and like his process is huge, because you really do start feeling these objects in 3D space. So like I said, with Star Circuit, it's going to be almost more bike than a lot of figures. I mean, there'll be a lot of figures, but there's gonna be so many bikes in the comic. It's just gonna be this kind of cool cyberpunk world with a lot of street racers and pro racers and androids and a lot of craziness. So I suggest, I mean, if you want, you can go check out what I have done already on my. I mean, I think I have the most work on my Patreon page, which you don't have to even sign up. I think most of it's open to the public, but you can go to starcircuit.com or starcircuitcomic.com rather, and or the Patreon page, and I'll link links to those in the description. But here, like I said, I finally realized I need to turn the wheel. It's gonna make the bike way more believable. This is like if I didn't turn this wheel, it would have made it look like not exactly amateur, because amateurs don't necessarily know how to draw this well. But I would say it would look just fake, not natural, you know. So you'd have this really good rendering of a stiff bite. It's like it's the equivalent of you having a guy in a T-pose, or like just standing straight with a blank expression in the middle of like a fight in Chinatown. This dude's just standing straight looking at the wall. That's how blatant it would be. So decided to turn the wheel, figure out the section all again, and yeah, obviously look at this takes patience. I don't know how many hours it really took me to just do this bike alone. Obviously I was talking this whole time, not thinking that I was going to do a voiceover, but the whole time I was talking kind of to myself, and thinking of ways to explain all this, and taking my time. So I probably would have knocked this out quicker, if I had not done that. But you can see it probably took me a few hours to get this bike done, at least. And that's only because you have to build it up from nothing, unless you want a more gestural kind of bike. But with vehicles, that's the whole point of this, is to make your comic more believable. And this is the first step, making the side plane, and then moving from the side plane to making things 3D, and that's going to give everything weight in your world. And that's the whole object. as you as a comic penciler, it's not about these fancy figures. It is, but it's more also about this completing this world, completing these backgrounds, and the publishers take notice of that. They will want you to be able to do all this because not everybody does, and you're gonna kind of create a name for yourself that way if you really know how to draw everything. So that's part 1, guys. That is it. Like I said, have this cool cyberpunk racing comic called Star Circuit coming out very soon. I wouldn't say very soon, but I'm working on it daily and putting up updates very frequently. But it will be coming out by the end of the year for sure. I don't want to make it seem like it was coming out next week. However, there's another part to this video, so give it maybe a week or so and I'll put up the second half to this, and it'll be finalizing everything. You'll get to see this bike in 3D and figure out how to really manipulate everything for your own purposes. You'll start, I suggest you try to do your own motorcycle or a car. Go pick up Scott Robertson's book and try to work all that into your comic penciling repertoire of skills. So obviously I'm working on my dreams and working on the story, which is really one of my biggest aspirations, is to get this thing done. I've never had a book of mine go to this level, and I'm super psyched for it. The story's awesome, and I can't wait for it to be shared with everyone else. So check out StarCircuitComic.com and the Patreon, which is patreon.com/catapanelart. If you want to support the book, please. I really appreciate it. Any funds that come in are just really helping me put more time into it and give the book the attention I think it deserves. And I'm hoping you guys come back for the second part. Hopefully I didn't turn you off with all this technical mumbo jumbo, but it's really, believe me, if you want to draw comics professionally or even just as a hobby, this is going to make you have such a better understanding of shapes and objects in space that your worlds are going to be way more believable. So again, come back, watch the second video. It's going to be awesome, and thanks for showing up. Thanks for all the likes. I've got this almost forgot, I got this kick-ass study stream I do every weekday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and I can jump on stream for a couple hours and draw a bunch of everything. And I think it's super useful, and I think I just want to have this little bit of a community around people that want to study and get better at art and just have fun, talk about comics and entertainment, and just have this little group of friends that get together every day or so and chat about everything art and comic related. So please join me there. I put up posts about it all the time, so subscribe, hit the bell button, and that way you get all the notifications, right? So and also like the video. It also helps, gives me a good idea of what videos you do actually like, and what videos that I should maybe change up the formula for. So thanks for stopping by. My name is Joe. This is Comic Penciling, and I've been working on my dreams. You do the same. Until next time, keep drawing.